Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I've spent my whole life putting family first. My husband passed away a decade ago, leaving me and our son, Liam, to carry on without him. We did well at first. Liam and I were close. So close, in fact, that I thought I'd done something right as a parent. He would come over regularly, call to check in, ask how I was doing. He wasn't just my son. He was my friend. But everything changed after he married Heather. I wish I could say I liked her. I wanted to, at the beginning. I wanted to give her a chance, to welcome her into our family. She was polite enough on the surface, but it didn't take long to realize that Heather had a sharp tongue hidden beneath that friendly smile. It started small, little comments about how I kept house, offhand remarks about how I spent my time. "Oh, you're still doing that gardening thing?" she'd say, as though my flowers were a personal affront. She always had a way of making me feel inadequate without ever directly criticizing me. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was just awkward. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But then there were the snide comments about my cooking at family dinners. The way she would roll her eyes if I mentioned my late husband. The subtle digs at how I didn't keep up with the times. And Liam, he never seemed to notice. Or maybe he just didn't want to notice. He'd laugh it off, tell me not to take it personally, or even join in occasionally. "She's just joking, Mom," he'd say. But it didn't feel like a joke. Even so, I kept my mouth shut. I told myself it wasn't worth causing tension. I wanted to keep the peace, to be the good mother-in-law who didn't meddle. I kept my visits short, smiled through the barbs, and stayed out of their way. Then my health started to decline. I'd always been independent, taking care of my house and my little garden, running errands, keeping up with old friends. But I began to notice small things. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. I'd lose track of the date. Sometimes I'd pick up the phone to call someone, only to realize I didn't know who I meant to call. At first, I laughed it off, senior moments, I'd say. But as the months went by, it became harder to ignore. My sister Clara noticed it too. She gently suggested I see a doctor, just to be safe. That's when I got the diagnosis: dementia. Hearing that word felt like the ground shifting beneath me. I knew what it meant. I'd seen friends and neighbors go through it. I knew it wasn't going to get better, that the person I'd always been would slowly slip away. I felt scared, lost, and utterly alone. I told Liam. I thought he'd be concerned, that he'd say, "We'll figure this out together." Instead, his response was practical, too practical. He nodded, told me he was sorry to hear it, and then immediately said, "You should think about sorting out your will." I remember staring at him, waiting for the part where he'd say, "But don't worry, Mom, I'll help you. I'm here for you." That part never came. Still, I did what he asked. I had a will drafted, leaving everything to him. After all, he's my only child. Who else would I leave it to? I didn't even question it. I trusted him. I believed that he'd take care of me, and when the time came, honor my wishes. I thought, he's my son. He'll do the right thing. As my condition worsened, I found myself needing more help. Little things, like fixing the leaky faucet or driving me to appointments, became challenges. I called Liam for help, hoping he'd understand, but he always seemed busy. "Work's been crazy," he'd say, or "Heather's got a lot going on right now." He never had time, never offered solutions. I felt like I was slowly becoming invisible to him. And then one day, he showed up at my house with a folder full of brochures. "Mom," he said, "I think it's time to look into a nursing home." A nursing home? The words hit me like a slap. I hadn't even mentioned moving out of my house. I just needed a bit of help, someone to check in on me now and then. I wasn't bedridden, wasn't wandering the streets. I still had my independence, or at least I thought I did. But Liam was insistent. "You'll be safer there," he said. "They can take care of you properly. I'm worried about you." And Heather, of course, chimed in. It's what's best for everyone, she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. You'll have professionals looking after you, and we'll visit all the time. I knew what that meant. They wanted me out of the way. I was no longer their problem. I tried to protest. I told Liam I didn't want to leave my home, that I just needed a little more help. But he wouldn't hear it. He insisted it was for my own good. The next week, they drove me to the nursing home and left me there. The staff was kind, but it wasn't home. I felt abandoned, discarded, like a burden no one wanted to carry. I spent my days sitting by the window, staring out at a world I used to be part of. Liam didn't call. Heather didn't call. They never visited. I was completely alone. After a few months, I couldn't take it anymore. I called my sister Clara and told her where I was. She was furious. "You're coming to stay with me," she said. She didn't ask if I wanted to leave. She just came and got me. Moving in with Clara was like stepping back into the light after months of darkness. She made me feel valued, cared for, like I mattered again. That's when I started rethinking everything. I looked at the will I had signed, the one that left everything to Liam, and I felt sick. He had asked for my will right after my diagnosis, but when I needed him, he wasn't there. Clara had been there. Her kids had been there. They treated me with kindness and respect. They showed me what family should feel like. So I changed my will. I left the house to Clara's kids. It felt like the right thing to do, and I didn't tell Liam. Why would I? He hasn't checked on me since he dropped me into nursing home. Well, as luck would have it, my mother let it slip, and the moment Liam found out, the phone calls started. "Mom, what are you doing? You're out of your mind. How could you betray me like this?" The messages kept coming, some pleading, some angry, all guilt-tripping me. He even threatened to take me to court because I've lost my mind and don't understand what I'm doing. His own mother. After everything, he had the nerve to say I was being unfair. That was the final straw. I told Clara, "I can't deal with this anymore. I'm done." I blocked Liam's number. I went no contact. I didn't do it lightly. This was my son we're talking about. But I couldn't keep letting him hurt me. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what happened, or why Liam changed so much after marrying Heather. All I know is that I've finally done something for myself, and for the people who actually care about me. Am I the a-hole for cutting my son out of my will? OP is not the a-hole. OP's son's behavior is just appalling. He pushed OP into a nursing home when OP needed help, and didn't even visit or call to check on her. And now that OP is making decisions based on how he treated OP, he's throwing a fit? OP is absolutely not the a-hole for deciding to leave her estate to people who actually showed her kindness and care. Actions have consequences, and looks like OP's son is learning that the hard way. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. He wanted to free up your house and shuffle you out of sight, and now he's mad that you decided to put your estate in the hands of people who actually have your back? He only seems to care now that he knows he won't benefit financially. You're well within your rights to make that choice, and good on you for standing your ground. Not the a-hole. He abandoned you at a nursing home because he couldn't be bothered to help, and now he's upset you made your own decisions about your will. If anything, you've done exactly what he suggested. You sorted your affairs. He didn't want to be there for you, so why should he inherit anything? Stick to your decision. Not the a-hole. It's amazing how quickly people can show their true colors when money is involved. He was fine ignoring you when you needed him, but now that he's been cut out of the will, he's suddenly interested again? You're not being spiteful. You're simply acknowledging who was there for you. Don't let him guilt-trip you into feeling bad about it. I, 44 male, had a daughter when I was 16. I was young and dumb, but one good thing that came out of it was my wife Alana, 44 female. Fortunately, I come from a well-off family, and when Alana was kicked out, my parents took her in. 2 years later, we had our son. We wanted both kids to grow up together. My parents helped out a lot, and years later I became a successful lawyer, and Alana became an architect. My family doesn't do Christmas, and for birthdays we always got what our children wanted. So unequal gifts or favoritism never really came up. As for education, we agreed to pay for everything. Because of our income, we were not eligible for most scholarships, and frankly, even if they were, I would have still paid because someone else could really use it. When my daughter, Sam, now 28, turned 18, she took a break. I got her a job in my firm's mailroom where she worked for 2 years. As she still lived with us, she saved most of it. Even after she got into a good law school, she worked part-time. I didn't spend much on her even though we just wanted her to enjoy college without worrying about anything else. She paid for most of it herself. My son, Bill, now 26, got into a prestigious medical school. We paid for everything, including pre-med. Sam was never jealous, and we never had problems with Bill, but problems began with their partners. Sam's partner is a good man. He's a total geek and a computer engineer. He's kind, polite, and gets along with us. He didn't come for money and very responsible. A good fit for Sam. My son's partner, Jill, on the other hand, is a handful. I wouldn't call her a gold digger, but I can say she's very materialistic. When Bill started his residency a year and a half ago, I stopped paying for his expenses, but as soon as they moved in together, he started asking for money sometimes. A few months ago, I gave him $50,000 to put a deposit on a house. Sam got engaged a month ago, and we decided to gift them a house I got for a bargain. Why? Because I never really spent much on Sam. On New Year's Eve, Sam couldn't stop thanking us for the gift. Bill was all smiles. Jill, on the other hand, was confused. Bill knew beforehand, but Jill didn't. I noticed them whispering to each other, and Bill grew upset. After a while, Jill started making snide remarks. Things escalated, and Bill accused us of favoritism. He thought it was unfair that Sam got a whole house while he only got $50,000. Things got loud, and I finally had enough. I finally said it was unfair, and I'll remedy it right now. I wrote a check for $50,000 and gave it to my daughter. Bill was confused, and Jill started shouting. My wife intervened and said now they are even. We're done and spent enough on him. She kicked him out and asked him not to come back home or expect any help from us until he thought long and hard about everything and apologized to us. Bill was silent, but Jill called us a-holes as they left. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Only $50,000? You paid for his entire education in medical school, while Sam worked and saved. Seems Jill is a gold digger who is winding him up. Hopefully he'll have a good think and come to his senses. Not the a-hole. Bill obviously doesn't understand just how much having med school fully paid for really set him up for life. A lot of doctors who self-fund are still in debt up to your age or beyond in some cases because of predatory loan practices. If he decides to talk to you again, sit down with him and explain just how much medical school cost and why you feel hurt that he is now trying to ask for more when you technically gave a lesser gift to his sister. Not the a-hole. The writing the second check to Sam was a bit over the top. That didn't help an escalating situation. However, your justification, that you spent a lot on your son early on and now you're compensating for Sam, that addresses the so-called unfairness. But the other thing is, your kids are adults. You get to decide how much money to spend on your adult children, and if they feel it's unfair, they can have a non-crappy convo with you about it. The way Jill and Bill chose to handle it, snide remarks, accusations, calling you names. They're adults, and they're not hurting. This is like siblings complaining that mom only left the sapphires to Annie when everyone knows the sapphires mean more to Leslie. Get over yourselves, kids. I'm in the incredibly fortunate position to be in a substantially better financial position than my brother and sister-in-law. They have 3 school-age children. All 3 children are enrolled in private schools, but also happen to live in areas with at least decent public options. My brother and sister-in-law own a small number of hotels, and were doing quite well financially until virus hit, with no real recovery in sight as small business owners. They're currently looking to sell the business. It is also worth noting that they are property rich, with multiple houses, and cash poor. In mid-2020, they reached out and asked if I could pay the private school fees for their kids. I have been very happy to do this. Over the past 3 years, this has amounted to gifting them $100,000 to date. My brother claims it's a loan, but in my head it's truly a gift. If he never pays me back, I would be perfectly okay with it. I feel like if you lend money to family, you have to be prepared and okay with the idea of not getting paid back. So I already mentally prepared when I agreed to this. It's generally never been a big deal about this, mostly because I've been genuinely happy to do it. This is not the problem. The problem is that they keep asking for money. My brother recently called me up asking me to pay for the next school year for them as well. I can afford it, but it is reaching a pretty material amount to me. I'm not made of money either. I also worry about the moral hazard that this creates. where they assume I will subsidize their lifestyle indefinitely. I think they are relying on me to defer making some hard choices in their lives and personal finances. For example, selling one of their extra houses, or maybe considering public school choices, if they truly cannot afford private school. I also admit being a little annoyed that they went on a 3-week family holiday in Florida last year, while still asking me to fund school. On the other hand, this really speaks to the entire outcomes of my niece and nephews. I love them dearly and want the best for them. While I might choose to continue the arrangement, and I realize that would be just my choice, what are my moral obligations here? Would I be the a-hole if I gave them a clear timeline? Example, 1 more year to be funded by me, so that they have enough time to plan ahead and make some thoughtful decisions about their personal finances and priorities. It also feels like just yanking the rug out from under them would be the wrong decision. Or would I be screwing up my niece and nephew's lives by playing the moral high ground with my brother and sister-in-law? Not the a-hole. You are not yanking the rug out from under them if you have a conversation with them about it. You mentioned giving them a timeline. That is perfectly reasonable. It seems like they are taking advantage of you, especially given the 3-week vacation. While it may be uncomfortable for them to take a loss by having to sell some of their property, that is life, especially when it comes to finances. Not every investment is going to be a winner. At the end of the day, they are responsible for raising their children. You have already gone far above and beyond what can be reasonably expected of you. The real estate market is very hot right now, so it's a good time to sell. I would probably expect brother to put some skin in the game by telling him he has to pay half of next year's tuition, and all of it after that. You would not be the a-hole. They're taking advantage of you. Not the a-hole. The public schools are fine, and if private school is a must, they can sell one of their houses. It's obnoxious to ask you for cash just because their assets aren't liquid. It sounds like they are multimillionaires in their own right. For background, Stella and I are identical twins, 29 female, and we will both be 30 when her wedding comes around this fall. I had her as my maid of honor 8 years ago, and she promised me that I could be hers when her wedding came around. I have 2 kids, 6 female and 3 female. They're the flower girls. My marriage fell apart just over 2 years ago due to a stillbirth and my husband's infidelity. My parents and sister were the only reason I didn't drown from the stress, loneliness, and total abandonment of my spouse. I was a total mess. I went to therapy, got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, quit drinking, and I owe a lot of it to my amazing sister. She's the reason why I kept chasing down my ex for child support when he stopped suddenly paying. He suddenly switched from world's best dad to deadbeat jerk, so quickly that my ex-mother-in-law is disgusted with him. Stella and John, 35 male, got engaged last year. His parents are paying about 60% of the wedding. Our parents are paying 30%. Stella and John are paying for the rest themselves. The biggest caveat is that they must be married in John's family's church, full mass with communion. The family is on board because this is going to be a very big wedding. Tonight, Stella had invited me to dinner, as they had finally reserved a date for the church and reception, assuming it was to formally ask me to be her maid of honor. I was excited since I haven't been in a wedding party aside from my own wedding. John was with her. Weird because Stella didn't mention him coming at all in our texts about the dinner. We hugged like usual, but John didn't. Weirder. After we got our drinks, they got to it. In a nutshell, John expressed the following. Despite my best efforts to keep it secret, my parents found out that you're divorced when they asked why your husband wasn't coming. They are no longer comfortable with you as maid of honor, because it won't look good to the church if my family hears about the divorce. You can be a bridesmaid, but can't mention the divorce or your conditions at all during the wedding events. I was stunned, and I felt tears in my eyes. Stella started crying too, and she tried to spin it in a good way. This is way less stressful for you, so it's a good thing. Mother-in-law has already approved my BFF as my maid of honor, so please don't make this any harder. I knew that I couldn't possibly stay there through an entire meal. I had to process this new info alone. I didn't speak. I just paid for my wickedly expensive cocktail and left to order an Uber home. A few hours ago, I texted Stella that I would not be in her wedding party at all. That was my decision. I wouldn't pull my daughter out, but I would only attend as a guest. She wouldn't take this as an answer, so I had to temp block her due to her excessive texts and calls. I sent my parents a summary of what happened and promised to call them when I was in better shape tomorrow. Stella thinks that this is a total overreaction. I don't even want to know what John thinks at this point. Please help me. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I half expected to be told to just put up with it and be a plain bridesmaid, while, which difficult, I kinda would have forced myself to just to make Stella happy. I was just so blinded, and I feel like I've been gut punched, and I do need to be told if I'm overreacting in a big way sometimes. I'm going to fall asleep now while binging Friends, and wonder if my twin has suddenly become an Ursula instead of Phoebe. Edit 2. I have a call scheduled with my parents this afternoon. From what I gathered, they are extremely upset with Stella and John at the moment. Depending on how that goes, I will talk to my girls about doing something big and fun instead. The more I think about it, sitting through a mass sounds less and less appealing. I'm not even religious. Not the a-hole. Honestly, I wouldn't let the kids be in this wedding either. They don't need to be subjected to the in-laws' high and mighty attitude. Not the a-hole. I'm appalled that your sister is even going through with this. Like mother-in-law approved BFF to be maid of honor? What the actual hell? Good thing you noped out, because I have a funny feeling you won't be the only one if mother-in-law is controlling this from behind the scenes. Yikes, not the a-hole. Be prepared for your sister-in-law to try to push you out of her life, because it's already starting. Update. John found the post and shared it with Stella. Wish I used the fake name Ursula since she joked about the detail herself. Stella, Ursula, has officially called off the wedding. When John was ranting about the post and how bad the comments were painting him, he said that your sister must be off her meds and going manic. You better get her under control. But then Stella, Ursula, actually came undone on him and began calling out everything that John and his family had put her through. Then she took off the ring and chucked it across the living room. John went into a rage, and while he didn't do anything but yell at her, he threatened her in regards to her mobility issues. Stella Ursula uses a cane to walk. This was what triggered her to text our parents and myself. By the time our parents made it to the house, John was gone, and she had packed up her bags and left with them. Her cane was not in the house. Stella Ursula wanted to thank you all for the comments calling her out. It shattered the mosaic that John built around them. And while we're both still raw and processing the last couple days, I am glad to have my sister again. She was someone else I hardly recognized a few days ago. As kids, I was more outgoing and she was more reserved. So I felt obliged to go along with her the other night despite how conflicted I felt. But again, Stella Ursula says thanks for the wake-up call. And John, if you see this, duck you. I, 63 female, and my husband, 67 male, ran into an issue with my son last year. During the virus, his girlfriend got pregnant. He moved her in with his roommates who were not happy. The roommates left and they re-signed with the landlord just themselves, but his girlfriend couldn't or wouldn't find a job, and he lost his job a few months later and couldn't pay rent. They stayed for 7 months and then got evicted. Now they have an eviction on their record and terrible credit because they lived off of credit cards, so they have thousands in credit card debt. I didn't want them moving in. My son, 38 male, lived at home until he was 31, so we had a lot of trouble getting him to move out. But his girlfriend was giving birth soon, so we took them in. They stayed for almost a year, and the deal was they both get jobs, they help pay utilities, and pay off their credit cards and find a place to live. They were only supposed to stay for 6 months, but they wouldn't move out when we asked at the end of the 6 months. They said because of the eviction on their record, no one would rent to them. They also didn't make enough to pay utilities. So my husband and I pay more in utilities, and they ate for free as well since they would take from the fridge and wouldn't buy any groceries themselves. We offered to help them with baby expenses, diapers, car seat, etc. at first, but it's been almost a year and we are still paying for it. They were doing DoorDash but not working more than 3 to 4 hours a day. I kept trying to get my son to get a full-time job, but he just got angry and accused me of nagging him. His girlfriend also is very messy and doesn't clean up after herself. I've changed more diapers and fed her son more than she has, and it's infuriating because they chose to have a child but won't take responsibility. My husband and I have been retired for 2 years now, and we had planned to move to Chile, where I'm from. We were supposed to sell the house last year and didn't, just to let them stay. But now it's been over a year and we're sick of it. We kept telling them they had to move out and they just ignored us, so we put our house up for sale. We had wanted to renovate it first, but they wouldn't let us into their bathroom and room, so we decided to just sell as is. We got a fair offer and closed in a weekend, told them they had 2 months to move. My son yelled at us for kicking them out and not caring about him, and shattered our decorative vase we had. They finally moved out, and we are in between places and will be going to Chile next month. But my son and his girlfriend currently have nowhere to live. They're staying with a friend now, but they're only letting them stay until the end of the month, and then they will have to figure it out. My son yells at me over the phone and tells me I'm never allowed to see my grandson again for kicking them out. I don't know where I went wrong that he couldn't be an adult and get a job and move out without being forced. Not the a-hole. He's 38. You were way more patient than you could have been. Not the a-hole, but perhaps set up a trust for that kid for when he comes of age, because it sounds like he may need it. You may have gone wrong nowhere at all. Some amazing kids come from awful parents, and sometimes, though rarer, amazing parents end up raising crap birds. I do worry for the kid, and I think you should call CPS. This baby is a baby, and there's a decent chance of adoption since the two of them can't get it together. If I were you, I'd try to come to peace with never seeing your grandchild, because even if they keep the kid, they will always use that child as a pawn to get money and housing. And anytime you say no, they will threaten and remove the child. Your son is nearly 40. I'm so sorry because I know you're embarrassed. But whether you did a good job or a bad job, your job here is done.